This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. With agriculture broadcasters Orion Samuelson and Max Armstrong. And featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Soye. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pioneer. Proud to work with farmers in the most complex and rewarding industry on earth.
Coming up on this weekend's broadcast, it's the time of the year the turkey is in the center of the stage. What's happening in that segment of agriculture right now? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the broadcast here. Mr. Pearson allowed me to social distance with him at the table. Thank you for that.
Hey, it's a pleasure to see you in person, Max, especially as we head into the holiday season.
It's a confusing picture this year when you look at all that is expected with our families and whether or not we'll be getting together for the holidays.
Absolutely, and just the logistics. Getting that Thanksgiving meal to the table takes a lot of work, and a lot of that work goes back several months. To help us understand what's going on, we're going to talk to Brian Ernest from IHS Markit. Brian, earlier this year when COVID hit, a lot of people were shocked by how the livestock industry took it, but we didn't talk a whole lot about poultry. Bring us up to speed. What happened in that industry back when COVID was first going around?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Certainly the discussion around the disturbance in the production side stems back to that time frame. From a production standpoint, there's been issues with COVID at plants. They've had some dampening in terms of production there. But really it stems from the consumer side as well. We had some runs on stores where you saw some non-traditional items make their way to the retail shelf, and one of those happened to be turkey, where we had some disappearance occur at a time frame where we typically don't see that happen. So certainly it's playing into overall supply situation in the current time frame.
Well, given the current time frame and the recent upsurge in COVID cases across the country, Brian, has the poultry industry, turkeys in particular, been able to rebuild? We started the year at an actual deficit in terms of overall supplies for turkeys in general. And we haven't seen a very strong building in overall inventories. The cold storage report for August actually showed a 10% decline in whole bird holdings. That's typically where we see a peak in terms of inventories. And it's an even more, it's a stronger situation for the hens, which were down roughly 14% when compared with a year earlier. So we've got a tighter supply situation leading into the big holiday this year.
Brian, how much of our turkey consumption actually takes place during this holiday period? I mean, starting in about the 70s, we started to see the spread of turkey consumption almost the year round.
Yeah, and really the last half decade, we've seen expansion into the deli counter, more acceptance throughout the year, stronger use. And one of those channels is the hotel and restaurant industry. And we've seen, a lack of demand and support from that sector this year as we've got less business travel. And, that has been a detriment to the turkey industry. So there's more reliance on this eating occasion to support overall disappearance this year, where we haven't seen that as much in recent years.
Is there any suggestion about just what kind of preference the consumer will have for this Thanksgiving bird? In other words, we've been told that we shouldn't congregate the way we have in the past for Thanksgiving. Does that mean that the consumer will be after a smaller bird?
Yeah, that certainly you'll have that to a degree. I think the family gatherings that we'll see for Thanksgiving this year likely will have fewer table settings than what you traditionally see, but we'll probably have more of those gatherings if folks aren't going outside their immediate family for Thanksgiving. The other thing we're anticipating is it may be a last-minute decision for Thanksgiving this year, and that suggests that we could see more of the meal prep take place at the retail establishment or the grocery store, and we anticipate we'll see some popularity show up there this year.
We often see it used as a loss leader in this period. You buy the groceries and they throw the turkey in with it. Will there be some of that this year, Brian?
Yeah, we've certainly noticed some aggressive feature activity
birds as low as, in the 39 to 50 cent per pound area, even in certain regions. But we don't think the retailer will have to be very aggressive to move through the available inventories this year. And we anticipate we'll have successful clearance this year.
Brian, we appreciate it. Thanks for spending time with us here. Brian Ernest from IHS Markit.
Well, turkey prices aren't the only prices farmers are keeping an eye on. Of course, we've got to talk the commodity markets as well. And to help us make sense of what's going on, Jerry Gulke from the Gulke Group is joining us this week. And Jerry, this past week was a doozy with the supply and demand estimates from USDA. Do you want to bring us up to speed? What happened?
Well, they surprised a lot of people, and certainly, based on their history of being cautious about doing some things that are radical, so to speak, they were behind the eight ball. For a couple of years, they kept coming up and saying, well, we lost 300 million bushels of corn and so forth. And a lot of us were saying, if you get your act together and show your predictions or whatever up front, think of what we could have got for prices if we'd have known we had 300 or 400 million less bushels of corn and so forth, and beans as well. Well, they caught up on the report and actually really boosted exports to China, admitted finally that the sales to China didn't match up with their projections. And the shocker was in soybeans, that they brought soybeans way below what the trade thought. And we're down below 200. It wasn't that long ago, we were talking 900 for years to come, and just how quick things change. So this looks like a permanent change, at least as permanent as we can get for about a year to come.
Well, I think that's on a lot of growers' minds. Let's talk soybeans there. You mentioned the 190 million bushel carryout, down substantially from just this past spring. Now, when you look ahead, Jerry, how much more can this thing rally? Farmers are getting excited about beans in the teens. Is that in the cards?
Well, that's a possibility, and it depends on, of course, weather in South America. It's not favorable, but they're going to get some showers in the next 7 to 10 days. And as the weathermen will say, more will be needed. And that's obvious because we farm, we know we need more than just a shower here and there. But much more problems, I'd say, towards the end of November, you're going to run out of time. And there are exporters and there are people who've got a lot of money betting on the markets are saying that you could project zero stocks coming out of the United States, which is impossible. There's a pipeline in there, and I think we're very close to pipeline. Pipeline might be, stocks and transits to wherever, crushing plants and exporting areas. We're probably very close to that. So this is going to get stay volatile, and we're going to see pullbacks, profit taking, but I think the underlying demand out here has changed and translates, well beyond this South America crop. So we have to watch that. And is China going to continue to buy? And we've been kind of promoting the idea that for months ago that, it's high time that the buyers of our products, whether it's wheat and corn and soybeans, take on some of the burden of carrying some of the stocks rather than us carrying the bulk of the world stocks. And why don't you buy for strategic reserves in case COVID comes back again? And I think we're seeing some of that. There's probably a danger that you front end load this thing, but China's demand is for real. So.
The demand is for real, but we have seen China in the past cancel substantial orders and then buy on the dip. Is that a risk you see in the year ahead, or do they really need beans that badly?
Well, I don't think you want to slap President-elect Biden in the face if he does become president and ruin that. You're going to want better relations. There doesn't seem to be a reason for them to cancel it. The crush works. Same way on the corn. The corn is very high priced in Russia or in China, and we are very competitive in that route. So I don't see them canceling anything. If they do so, to become later next summer.
All right. Well, we will dig in more to the commodity markets with Jerry Gulke from the Gulke Group in just a second. Don't go away. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. We're talking markets with Jerry Gulke from the Gulke Group. And Jerry, in the first segment, you mentioned we are down nearly to pipeline supplies in the soybean market. Corn ending stocks also getting tighter. What's the market's reaction to Tuesday's USDA report been on the corn side?
Well, we saw a big jump, of course, in prices, and it kind of shocked us that we would increase exports that much. Oftentimes USDA will gradually do it, but when you look at that number, it implies that we better get on the stick and be shipping some of this stuff out of the country, because from here on out, in order to meet that lofty number that USDA says is there, and maybe gets bigger because they lowered the Ukraine crop much more than I thought they would at one shot. And there's a problem, of course, we mentioned in South America. That crop could be, they've already started to trim that, even though we haven't proven that we have a weather problem totally yet. But if we're going to meet those projections, we're going to have to start shipping 50 and 60 million bushels a week. Right now we're in the mid 30s at best. So we're selling it, but we're not moving it out of the country. So that smacks either of a real surge in exports and demand for corn to be shipped later on in the beginning of we'll say Q1 of 2021, about the time that maybe the soybean export book gets filled and starts to slow down. But it's going to be a tall order to move this much corn out of here, which smacks of, at some point in time, maybe they have to admit that the exports are too high. But
Gotcha.
We'll see.
Well, speaking of exports and first quarter 2021, we will have a new president by all accounts. When we look back on this election, President Biden, what do you anticipate? What does the market anticipate that doing for pricing and the trade war?
Well, there's not a lot that he can do in the short run except make some executive orders and so forth. But I think from a trade standpoint, he's basically more moderate, and there'll be less tweets, no tweets probably, and certainly no more tariffs. So that kind of takes the pressure off China. Now, whether China says, well, we don't need to buy anymore for strategic reserves, or we want to make nice with Biden and put our best foot forward to get back into a decent relationship, that's one thing. The other thing is the push towards the anti-oil type of thing. It sounds like he's got an initiative for alternative fuels that may really help biodiesel. There's a new way of formulating biodiesel that's more palatable, I guess, and California is behind that big time. And I think I've heard numbers from my oil friends that it could significantly replace the fracking that's going on in North Dakota with the need for soybean oil, and is probably agricultural positive. So we'll see how that plays out, whether we really lose much fracking. But this will take some time. But the biodiesel thing is real. It's going on in Europe already, and not talked about a lot by traders, and another supporting factor in soybeans that cropped up here in the last 6 months.
Yeah, and Jerry, before we let you go, we've got to talk the wheat market real quick. Didn't get a whole lot of shocks on Tuesday from USDA. Where do you see wheat going from here?
Well, wheat is I think is going to follow along with corn. You know, the traders like to take a look at what's good and what's mediocre, and they like spreads. And they have been buying or selling wheat and buying corn and beans, and they are still a little short wheat, I think. And we've got some problems in the wheat market. European Union would like to buy corn, but it's expensive. And if they go after feed wheat, or South Korea is another one, they like to feed wheat. And if they can't get it, then if they can't get the corn, then they're going to go after the wheat. So wheat is at a critical point, I think, here this week. It's on upward drawn trend lines, and we'll see what happens over the weekend with rain. Every weekend is always, you know how it is in the United States. It's never going to rain again on a Friday, and Monday morning we're raining. So we got to be careful of those weather markets.
Things can turn on a dime. Jerry Gulke from the Gulke Group.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform. Combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability. Have you yet stepped into the world of unmanned aircraft? Do you have a drone of your own? Chad Colby explains it might be easier to do that now. He takes a look at a small one and a relatively inexpensive one.
I can't wait to show you a new drone this week. Hi everyone, I'm Chad Colby. My go-to drone, well over the last year and a half or so, has been the DJI Mavic 2 Pro. Now, as you see right there, that kit's going to cost you upwards of $3,000 by the time you buy the extra controller and stuff. My friends at Flying Ag suggested I check out the DJI Mini 2. Now, this drone has been out in the previous versions, but it didn't pack the performance really needed for uses for myself or in agriculture, something you might use a drone for. But let me tell you, they have absolutely raised the bar with the second version. The controller is really slick. They made some really good enhancements to this. It's got an integrated mount there for your smartphone. The app is really, really smooth and easy to use. I'll show you that in just a minute. But I was really interested in the flight characteristics. This drone only weighs 249 grams. My goodness, a can of Coke weighs 370 grams. This thing is really lightweight. And a lot of times when you get lightweight drones, you give up performance, and not necessarily flight performance, but the output of the camera. So this past week, in terrible flight conditions, you can see right there, there's the METAR weather data from Bloomington, 28, 9 mile an hour wind, gusting to 40, and just look at the debris in the field flying. You can tell it's a really windy day. This little drone was absolutely amazing. So when I evaluate a drone, there's really two things I look at. One's the flight performance. How does it fly? How does it fly in extreme conditions? This thing gets an A+. It is so good. As you can see here, it's really doing the job in conditions that most of you, quite honestly, wouldn't even fly in. Now, in the right-hand corner, that's the screen recording of the app, and I've synced that to the video that I'm recording at the same time. I want you guys to know that that app, that's a new one too, and it's enhanced to be really easy to use. It's got a lot of those great features that you're used to, auto takeoff, auto land. You can switch it from stills to video, and you can adjust the camera, and those type of settings are all in there, but it worked really well. The other thing I look at when it comes to evaluation is the quality of the stills in the video, and as you can see here, this thing certainly gets a really high mark from my point of view. Now, it's not A+. This is not a $3,000 or $4,000 drone. This is a drone in that $700, $800 price range, and that's with a case and all that. But as you can see, it's even got digital zoom. It's got a lot of great features. So especially with the holidays coming around, and if you're looking for that great entry-level drone, this is the one, and it really looks great. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Chad's reports allow us to see how the technology is advancing. I remember it wasn't that many years ago, Mike, when he had a vehicle almost dedicated to carrying batteries.
Absolutely.
The whole back end of his pickup was batteries.
And now it's smaller than a cell phone.
Right.
It's incredible.
We'll have some more technology coming up a little bit later on. Stay with us on This Week in Agribusiness.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. As the calendar pages fly off and we get closer and closer to Thanksgiving, Max, farmers are wrapping up harvest nationwide. Corn harvest is 91% complete, and we're getting things done. You talk to a lot of growers. What are you hearing out there?
We're very pleased, of course. Very pleased, not just with the fact that they have completed harvest, but they've put a big dent into fall tillage. Those who want to get out there, till the soil, apply some fertilizer in the fall, they've been able to make real good progress with that. You know, you compare to other years. I mean, many farmers have in their mind they'd love to get it done by Thanksgiving. This year, a lot of growers that you and I know were able to clean off the combine and stick it away in the shed by Halloween.
Yes, indeed. You know, I've talked to a lot of growers who say this is kind of the fastest harvest season we've seen, at least in parts of Iowa and some of the northern Corn Belt, since 2012, which of course was the drought year, and there were no concerns getting into the field. But the nice thing about this mild fall weather, Max, talking to a lot of friends in North and South Dakota, is that particularly in that geography, this weather window has let them clean up a lot of the, I don't want to call it mistakes, but struggles of harvesting last year's corn early this spring. So to get that cleaned up heading into next year's growing season is really good news.
Lest we forget, there was a lot of corn that overwintered in North Dakota simply because it couldn't be harvested in the fall of 2019. In fact, if you look back a year ago, there was still, as of this date last year, in North Dakota, 84% of the corn still standing in the field. I believe that's about 85% was still out there. Now, as of last weekend, there was just 9% of the corn unharvested in North Dakota. The same was Minnesota. So it's wide open fields out there in those areas, for example, in Minnesota, where there's deer hunting getting underway. Oh, I hate to digress, but did you see the guy the other day who not only got a 10-point deer, but He got an alligator.
No, I didn't see this.
Yes, in Minnesota.
Was the deer in the alligator?
No, it was not far away.
Okay.
But they were separate, but they're going to be together in the future. He took them both to the taxidermist. He's going to have them mounted together. But he was out deer hunting. He shot the deer. He was tracking it, and he looks down in the mud by a pond, and there's a 3-foot-long alligator. So he calls the game warden. And he said, you're not going to believe this. I've got an alligator here. What should I do with it? The DNR guy said, bag it too. So he did. And so he's going to have them mounted side by side.
Wow.
A military veteran who is also a firefighter. And he said, yeah, I've never seen anything like this before.
Wow.
But back to the crops, with so much harvested, that leaves a lot of open fields, of course, for the hunt of the deer this time of year.
It does. And I think a lot of places, particularly in the northern Corn Belt, have got so much down corn from the derecho and from various hail events that there's probably going to be some fat deer as we get through the end of hunting season, for they've been grazing out in the cornfields.
Well, that leads me to a question, because you travel that derecho area so much. With all of that storage that was damaged in that 10th of August event. Do you see a lot of corn piled on the ground out there?
It's interesting. So I've been trying to keep an eye out to look for changes in ground piles. And there are a few, particularly at commercial elevators. I think we're seeing a little more on-farm storage on the ground, in addition to commercial elevators, I should say. But it's not hugely apparent so far. I expected to see a lot more, but I think the very tight bids, I think the fact that we're shipping a lot of grain out of the country is helping these elevators, keep a fresh supply, so we're not seeing everything piled on the ground so far.
Were some folks bagging it too into temporary storage just to find a home for it? I've been kind of surprised the last couple of years when I've flown over parts of the heartland, how many of those long bags you see out there.
There was an incredible sight on Interstate 35 in Missouri, and I'm sure some of our viewers will know what we're talking about, but there was a line of probably 40 grain bags, and it's been there for years, and I think we are seeing a lot more of that out in the countryside. I heard reports, no facts, but a lot of reports about grain bags and grain baggers in short supply this year. Right. Clearly, that's an indication that perhaps they're really looking to try something different for storage.
But I just thought, there could be so much stored outside. I wonder also if the companies that build bins staged a very rapid response to get some of these repaired and back in service in time for the harvest.
Well, I do know while we were at the Farm Progress show getting everything ready for the Farm Progress virtual experience, I had the chance to talk to a couple bin manufacturers, and that's what they said. They said that they have been able to mobilize very, very quickly. There are still some struggles in getting materials. Things have been tight, particularly in the steel world for the past couple of years. But if they can get over that hurdle, they were ready to rock and roll, and I know that some folks with damaged storage were able to get it fixed before harvest completed in some cases.
Now think about it. I mean, it wasn't without hiccups, but for the event that the derecho was, with the footprint that it had across the big corn and soybean region of Iowa, to have had a relatively minor, I don't mean to minimize it,
right,
but I mean compared to what we anticipated at the time and what it could have been, I think it's a real tribute to not only our farmers, but the agribusinesses that serve them.
Absolutely. You can think of the agribusinesses, whether it's the response to the catastrophe and how quick it was, and also the genetics that we've got coming in our corn and soybean crops. The ability to keep most of this stuff, intact, at least through harvest, is pretty incredible, Max.
I remember a few years ago going to a Farm Progress show. Those of us waiting in line where we thought there was downed corn, we wanted to, some of us were stuck there and had to try to find a restroom facility. There wasn't enough tall corn to help. It was a problem.
That's always a struggle, Max.
That says something to the testimony of these strong stalks.
It really does.
There's more coming up on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Greg Solier will be along with his forecast.
So stay with us, not only talking weather, but talking about the Brent Double Auger grain cart from the Farm Progress virtual experience coming up.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by ADM.
Wherever you are across America, welcome back to this weekend's This Week in Agribusiness.
That's right. We've got a lot to cover, and one of the things that we need to be talking about is regenerative agriculture. Sustainability, Max, is on everybody's minds, and some big ag companies are working with growers to try and find ways to plan for that next 100 years. Al Gustin has a story for us coming out of North Dakota.
Just another oats field, or is it part of a revolution in food production?
And so this is our project field right here. Just happens to be oats.
General Mills has targeted Paul Overby's field and fields of almost 50 other farmers in North Dakota, Minnesota, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. The Minnesota-based International Food Company has been buying Overby's oats for several years, but this is much more than just source identification. It's about regenerative agriculture. General Mills' mission statement says, in part, we are on a journey to make a meaningful difference through regenerative agriculture, which we define as an holistic, principles-based approach to farming and ranching that seeks to strengthen ecosystems and community resilience.
They looked out 100 years and said if General Mills is going to continue to sustainably source its grain products from up here, they need to be concerned about the soil.
To that end, General Mills has enlisted the help of an education and consulting group called Understanding Ag.
They approached us, would we be willing to educate a group of farmers and lead them down this regenerative path? The consultant that's assigned to the individual farmer goes and meets with them, does the baseline soil testing, and helps guide that farmer.
They came out here in the very first year, documented the soil carbon with some deep 4-foot probes. We've done bird inventory. Last year we did an insect inventory. 2 pieces that we've been working on are cover crops, and we would like to add livestock onto this project field at some point.
Spokesperson for General Mills says, we made a commitment to advance regenerative agriculture on 1 million acres of farmland by 2030.
It's been a win-win situation for both the farmers, and eventually it will be for General Mills.
General Mills has begun a regenerative wheat project in the Southern Plains states and a regenerative dairy project in the Great Lakes states. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Al Gustin.
Thanks, Al, for that report. And I tell you what, folks, as we continue to get more measurements of agricultural ground and more data, we're going to see a lot more companies moving to sustainable and regenerative practices in agriculture.
Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot BioProven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not.
Well, it has been a while since the three of us had the chance to talk about the weather. Greg, what's going on the West Coast this week?
Well, into California, points southward, same old, into the Pacific Northwest. Time to get those weather systems cranking. It is mid to late November and the start of a more active weather pattern, the wet season, and we'll begin to see that with time, but a long way to go to get things significantly recharged and snow across the Cascades. Some wind on this downslope flow across the Dakotas, Big Sky Country. Boy, those winds have been hellacious of late, and every reason to think that we will see that same setup play out again, and warmth again across the heartland. A more significant weather system will come ashore, maybe Northern California, Pacific Northwest, middle to late portions of the week. The cold for now bottled up across the Canadian Prairie, wind and mild air across the Dakotas, and hopefully some moisture gain expected into the northwestern part of the country. Same old, a La Nina setup that strengthens. You're not going to get much of anything that we think this wintertime season into California, the southwestern states, a little chill in the air. Quiet high pressure across the central and southern areas of the winter wheat belt. The ridge kind of re-strengthens here as the middle and late portions of the week build on in. Warmth across the desert southwest, aggravating the ongoing dryness and drought here. An area precip outbreak here, and maybe late in the week a stray shower into Northern California and points on northward.
Now, I've heard from some friends in the Corn Belt that they're getting whiplash from the change between hot and cold, Greg. Is that going to moderate?
Yeah, that roller coaster ride. Sometimes you're on the poleward side of the jet stream in this particular orientation. Sometimes you're on the southern extent of it, so you're going to be back and forth with temperatures, but we do see another round of warmth materializing, and wind has been the story. 60, 65, 70 mile an hour winds outside of Milwaukee last week, 80 on some of those squall line thunderstorms, but a quiet weather picture, sprinkles and snowflakes early in the week. Great Lakes region up towards the Sioux. Nice developing warm front, west to east flow off the Rockies, warming across the plains. That'll be spreading on eastbound, so plenty of opportunity if you haven't put a wrap on it with fall field work and harvest to get it done for next week, and probably be beyond. Stationary front down towards the Rio Grande. Quiet high pressure, a little nip in the air across the Ozarks, a little freeze, and we've seen that already down through the Delta. At least it is drier down there as the tropics quiet down as well. Little change with a couple of showers across the Gulf Coast area. Wind and warmth across areas of the southern plains into the southern Corn Belt. Pretty quiet weather picture as well. Continues on in the desert southwest.
Well, Greg, let us know what you're seeing as you go up the Ohio Valley into the northeast.
Again, wind and thunderstorm activity last week, downpours and that ongoing record-setting warmth, well, a little more significant fall and November feel. And again, a couple of showers of rain and snow across the Great Lakes region into the northeast of New England. Need more moisture here in this drought-ridden area of New England. Wind and chillier weather across much of the eastern Corn Belt as colder high pressure moves on in. It establishes itself across the mid-Atlantic region. South wind flow and a developing warm front. Maybe a little moisture up towards the Sioux. Otherwise, plenty of opportunity for outdoor work and a nice recovery on temperatures. Not done with maybe some record-setting values as we get deeper into the month of November. Still a little nip in the air across the northeast and New England. Boy, the moisture-laden areas of the Delta, southeastern states, and of late across the Carolinas drying out with a change in the jet stream configuration. A couple of cold fronts on the move. Just a stray shower South Florida. Little freeze potential again, parts of the Delta, Tennessee Valley early in the week, and little change except jet stream winds are coming back to the north. Maybe a stray shower Gulf Coast area. Dry time in the southeastern part of the country. A couple of showers on that northeast wind flow into parts of eastern and southern Florida. Otherwise, plenty of high pressure and control, sunshine, and a moderating trend in temperatures from west to east over the southeastern portions of the country.
Now, Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you. When the drought monitor map comes out each week, it's hard to miss how dry it is in the western part of the country. We'll check with Greg, and it looked to me like there might be some improvement in the extreme northwest, correct?
Yeah, perhaps northern California, more so the Pacific Northwest this week, Max, with a series of fronts out of the move. Finally, it's that time of the year to get moisture going in that part of the country, and it's really the second half of the week where we begin to see some of these totals materialize. 1 to 3 inch potential, up to a ½ inch parts of far northern California. A little snow in the higher peaks as well of the northern Rockies and Cascades. A little backwash moisture Great Lakes region here. Otherwise, plenty of opportunity for field work across much of the Corn Belt. And yes, cognizant of the dryness and drought, probably continues to expand over the plains for now. Leftover spotty showers Gulf Coast later in the week and up across the northeast of New England. At least the tropics and these really out of control moisture totals in the deep south and southeast abating for this week.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, are we out of that tropical storm season now?
I think at least as it applies to the mainland now. I wouldn't be surprised with a couple of these really subtropical or hybrid storms that maybe form up way out here in the central and western Atlantic that could very well be named, just adding to this record-setting scenario, this tropical weather season, which winds down on November 30th. Look at this big ridge of high pressure across the middle part of the country. Yeah, it is a return of some phenomenal warmth, plenty of outdoor work opportunities, and a very quiet weather picture across the plains and much of the Corn Belt, wet down through Florida and into the Pacific Northwest. Good news there.
Wow, some warmth there. Will that continue into the last few days of November?
Yeah, I think so. As we kind of wind out of fall and into meteorological winter time, look at this. Easy on the power and gas bill across much of the plains, parts of the Corn Belt too. Temperatures about normal here. A little sliver of chill into the northeast of New England, as it ought to be across the southern Canadian prairie, Pacific Northwest, and above average warmth continues back into the valleys of California. Again, active weather pattern here. Going to be hard pressed this wintertime season. Probably going to see a westward expansion and probably an increase in fire potential even in the winter season out there. Dry time, much of the heartland, a little above across the northeast of New England, and they will take it. Drought-ridden area too.
Just looking at the heart of the country, I get the feeling that farmers will really be able to wrap up all of their fall field work.
Yeah,
just because of the lack of precip you're talking
really,
about.
And it's really been several years since we've seen something like that with an early completion. And you want to get it done as we get deeper into the month of December. While the warmth is great here, look at this contrast and this buckling jet stream pattern that will bring a freeze into parts of central and southern California. Cold air across big sky country. Good news, northern California, parts of the plains, probably snow here. Upper Midwest, back to dry time across the Gulf Coast, and that will be a much needed scenario coming off the very wet weather pattern here over the past couple of weeks.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
In the shed this weekend, auger tractors, but one of them has a little different duty on the auger. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store Lock, the best tool cabinet you'll ever buy. When you take a look at one, you'll see, yeah, not only made in America quality, made to last quality, maximum storage and minimum space. Check out their cabinets at storelock.com. Well, we have 3 tractors in the shed this week, auger tractors, including a Ford. This belongs to our friend Jerry Davis, the Ford man in Perryville, Missouri, longtime equipment dealer there. He said this 9000 does the job in moving grain, as it was moving soybeans on this day with its 135 horsepower diesel engine, good hydraulics to run an auger too. Then at Creel Springs, Illinois, Tim Robertson is bringing plenty of power to the PTO with his IH 1086. About the same horsepower, I think, as Jerry's 9000 there in Missouri. They made that 1086 for 6 years at Rock Island, Illinois, and here's one proving it's still capable. An Alice Chalmers D15 made 55 years ago, elevating ear corn. There for Monty and Corey Chu, they put up about 5,000 bushels of ear corn each year for their nearly 300 head cow-calf herd south of Des Moines, right down there in Mike Pearson country. Murray, Iowa is their town. Well, let's switch to take a look at some of the equipment not quite so old that's crossing the block at Big Iron Auctions. Here's Mark Stock with his report.
Well, Max, November the 18th, 1,900 plus items from 21 different states will be sold on Big Iron, 131 different sellers. The David Noonan Estate Sales in Burlington, Kansas. They've got 105 items, including a John Deere 6190R mechanical front tractor. They've got a John Deere 9360R four-wheel drive with only 1,645 hours. They've got a New Holland Speed Rower 160 mower conditioner, 395 hours on this machine. Check out the 2017 Peterbilt 389 semi-truck as well. The Schlussler Family Farms LLC Estate Sales in Potter, Nebraska. 89 items including a John Deere 7720 combine, tractors including 4755 and 8570 four-wheel drive. Clayton and Leanne Shipper, their retirement sales from Flandreau, South Dakota. They've got a John Deere 9610 combine and a John Deere 4440 tractor. Check out First Start Rental Sales and Service Retirement. 522 items from Emporia, Kansas. Also selling for Beta Plantation in Epes, Louisiana, a 2015 New Holland T8410 mechanical front tractor with low hours. For you IH collectors, check out the 1466 Black Stripe with mechanical front end, selling for Loris Dune from Maquetta, Iowa. Max, all the bidding ends on November 18th on BigIron.com.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide, we stand for you.
This week's FFA Chapter Tribute is a little different. We are learning about the National Officers Team for FFA, and to help us understand it, Paxton Dahmer is joining us. And Paxton, thanks for taking the time to chat today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the National Officers. How many are you in serving right now?
Yeah, so there are 6 members of our team, and we represent different regions across the nation. So there's a central, a western, an eastern, and a southern region. And so there are 4 regional vice presidents along with the president and secretary.
That's fantastic. And when you think about the role that the National Officer Team plays in getting everything together, what is it? What's the importance of the National Officer Team?
Yeah, so we have the opportunity to represent our over 760,000 members. So throughout the year, you can find us in a classroom engaging with students, or this year possibly virtually engaging with students, helping them recognize their leadership potential. We obviously host our National FFA Convention in the fall, but then in addition to that, we have the opportunity to work with stakeholders and state officers across our nation, representing what FFA is all about and the brand that we've been able to build over the past nearly 100 years.
It is incredible. And when you think from a personal perspective, why you got on the National Officer Team, what is it that you are hoping to get out of this service?
You know, it's a year of service to FFA members, and so that's always been my #1 priority, and I kept that in check as I ran. And so I know that this year my hope is to spend as much time as possible interacting with FFA members across our nation. What I've discovered over my years in FFA is that every FFA member has a different story, and they've encountered different things in their life, and those things are what makes them who they are. And they're all unique, but they're all very important to agriculture. And eventually our members are going to be the backbone of American agriculture. And so my hope is that as a national officer, I'll be able to work with as many members as possible and help them discover their leadership potential so they can continue to carry our industry forward.
Fantastic. Paxton Dahmer, This Week in Agribusiness, salutes the National Officer Team.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
Let me say at the very outset that my only role in the recent election was to cast a vote. I did not campaign for any candidate, nor did I offer views on my feelings about the candidates for the White House, so I disqualify myself from that region. But let me offer some advice to the new administration, like the Secretary of Agriculture. Who should he be? Well, there are many candidates, but at this moment I would pick Colin Peterson, the Democrat from Minnesota, who was serving as the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee. I've known Colin for many years and interviewed him many times and have always been impressed by his knowledge of agriculture and agricultural legislation. And here's the basic reason why that's important. We write a new farm bill every 5 years, and the next time we have to write a farm bill is 2023. But we start planning right now. So whoever the Secretary of Agriculture might be, I would suggest he or she do what Mike Johans did several years ago when he became secretary, traveled to farm meetings across the country to talk to farmers, but more importantly, to listen to farmers to find out what they would like in the farm bill. And to you people who are farming and ranching and agriculture, be sure to participate if that were to happen with the new secretary. That's the only way you'll get your views expressed with the man who will be guiding the debate on the Farm Bill in 2023. Until we get further information, that's my comments on Samuelson Says.
Coming up, take a trip with us to the Farm Progress virtual experience as we look at the video for the Brent 1396 double auger grain cart. Crop yields continue to grow, and one of the challenges farmers face is getting that grain from the field to the elevator or the bin. Well, Brent has a solution for us from the Farm Progress virtual experience.
The Brent 1396 Avalanche double auger grain cart. Brent Avalanche grain carts have set powerful standards for unloading speed, convenience, capacity, and durability since 1998. The record continues with the 1396 Avalanche grain cart. In addition to the industry's first pivoting unloading auger, the 1396 adds greater unloading convenience with multi-directional downspout functions and unloading speeds up to 850 bushels per minute. The 1396 features a patented self-aligning rubber cushioned soft start auger system that ensures a smooth and complete engagement of the upper and lower auger for reduced stress and longer driveline life. This cart is equipped with a Digistar 410 scale system and the patented equalizer track system. The bidirectional rotation of the tracks ensures maximum ground contact for increased flotation. Brent Avalanche 96 Series grain carts lead the industry in grain handling convenience and efficiency. Steep-sloped interior sidewalls and single-point cleanout ensure fast, complete unloading. Model capacities are 2,500, 2,000, 1,500, 1,300, and 1,100 bushels.
That product demo is one of 100 at the Farm Progress Show website. Check it out, the virtual experience at farmprogressshow.com.
Yeah, a lot of tillage equipment there, too. And there's much of that on the roads these days.
Be safe, be careful.
As you travel out there, Mr. Mike, watch out for that ripper.
Thank you so much, Max. You too.
You wouldn't win that fight.
No.
We'll see you folks next weekend for This Week in Agribusiness. Thanks for being here. So long, everyone.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Pioneer and ADM. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.